joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline for a summer edition of Matich Monday as ESPN college football insider and expert BYU national champion Trevor Matich, who is road tripping through the Dakotas right now and taking time for us regardless. Trevor, it's great to have you with us on your vacation.
It is great to be here. I mean, Dana and I and my wife have had such a great time looking at sites. Some that we expected, some that we never expected, these unanticipated places of stunning beauty. And we don't want to go home. But I think the people staying at our house don't want us to come home either. So we're going to have an impasse at some point.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure, the vacation, not wanting it to end. But, I mean, speaking of unexpected things, this morning the Supreme Court ruled on college sports going forward and essentially called out the NCAA as a corrupt corporation. Trevor, what do you think this means for college football and college sports as a whole that the Supreme Court was so vehemently against the NCAA?
Well, I think it's good. And in some ways, where we are now is an unnecessary place because it is correct that the Supreme Court ruled that the NCAA has been an unfair or illegal restraint of trade towards college athletes, at least some college athletes. That's what they ruled. And so now things are going to change very rapidly. About a half a dozen states have already ruled that and put in place their own rules for name, image, and likeness. The Supreme Court now has opened the door for that to happen nationally. They didn't necessarily put in place a program. They just said the NCAA can't do this anymore. And there are more cases that are pending. And so we'll see how far that opens up. But guys, the thing that just makes me think about what's happened getting to this point. Because a long time ago, there were lawsuits relative to name, image, and likeness to compensating athletes beyond the scholarship. And the NCAA and the college presidents didn't do anything about it. And so as that continued to progress, it moved from the arena of the NCAA into the arena of people that don't necessarily have college football as their best interest. And that is lawyers, judges, legislators. They all have interests beyond college football that they want to balance with what they do with college football. I'm not saying that they have anything against college football, just to say that this all should have been handled years ago by the people whose interest was college football. And now, because they didn't do it, it's out of their hands and in the hands of others.
And it's interesting because what the Supreme Court's talking about is like straight up compensation as opposed to the additional bonus of name, image, likeness. There will be certain athletes that really benefit for that, but if you're getting, not paid to compete, it's been corrupt for a long time. It's certainly going to change. So do you think in the next 5 years, college athletes will be paid?
I think they'll be paid in some way. Right now, the ideas that are being put forward on name, image, and likeness is not to have the schools pay the players for name, image, and likeness, but rather to allow them to make as much as they could in the open market on their own name, image, and likeness policies, whatever they can get done. I think what BYU is doing with Built for Life is going to open the door for that. Because Built for Life isn't just a life skills program. It's also a partnership program with offline power partners in business that will allow players to not only maximize their name, image, and likeness opportunities as players for college football, but also to allow them to take that opportunity into the future. I mean, there are several schools that are doing a very good job of laying the foundation because right now we just don't know what the details will be. But BYU is at the highest level with the elite programs in the country at putting together that foundation that then will be able to maximize the details as they become known. So when you talk about players being paid, I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm pretty sure it won't be that the schools will say, hey, come here, we'll pay you this much. But it will be, come here, and these are your opportunities for you personally to maximize your own opportunities outside of football and name, image, and likeness. And right now, the foundation that's being laid by BYU and Built for Life is at the elite level in college football.
ESPN's Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. It is a Matich Monday in mid-June. Trevor, let's get to the actual football. We talked about name, image, likeness, the Supreme Court, Built for Life. What was your biggest takeaway as far as the state of the football program goes at BYU on Media Day?
There is so much confidence there, Spencer, so much confidence at Media Day. And I think a lot of it had to do with the depth they've been able to build over the last several years. Really, Kalani Sitake and his staff have been building a Power 5 style program in Provo. And one of those things is pipeline to the NFL. They put 12 guys from last year's teams into NFL camps this summer. 5 of them drafted, one the second pick of the draft, quarterback Zach Wilson. Well, how do you then replace those guys? And that's another Power 5 concept. In the past, a team like BYU would lose that many key players and have a big drop-off for a year or two. But BYU has developed a depth that the guys stepping into those roles have played a lot of football, have started a lot of games, some of them, and they are confident and experienced and ready to take over. And so that concept, I think, showed in the confidence that they had at Media Day, where players know, hey, we lost a lot of talent. We lost a lot of guys, but we're really good. And the guys that are stepping in are good football players that are experienced. And that's the biggest takeaway that I got, the confidence in the guys that are stepping into the roles of the guys that now have gone on to the NFL.
We saw a post-spring depth chart. There's a lot of depth there, a lot of excitement, a lot of talent, as you mentioned. Regarding the college football playoff, that was a big conversation on Thursday and will continue to be throughout the summer. What's BYU's best chance of getting into a potential 12-team playoff in the future? Is it getting into a Group of 5 conference because the Power 5 invite isn't up to BYU? Or is it stay independent and see what happens? Because it kind of depends on what the priorities are for BYU football, right? I don't sense that getting into a playoff is the highest thing. I think autonomy is at this point.
Yeah, Jerem, there's a lot to be said for autonomy, and the way that they're able to schedule so many Power 5 schools, even though BYU is an independent, is not in the Power 5 conference, makes it a Power 5-like situation. That helps recruiting. That helps credibility if they have a record that's good enough in terms of their access to the college football playoff. Now, where would they be better off, staying independent or joining a Group of 5 conference? That's hard to say, because right now the proposal is that the top 6 ranked conference champions will get an automatic berth in a 12-team playoff. Well, there's 5 Power 5 conferences. That means that the highest ranked Group of 5 conference champion will be in, according to this proposal. Last year, the top 2 highest rated Group of 5 conference champions would have made it, Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina. The Pac-12 would not have made it last year under that proposal. And we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but being in a Group of 5 conference is a viable way to get to the playoff. At the same time, for BYU, being able to schedule like they do, being independent, also gives them access to those at-large berths, because if there are 6 automatic berths, there are also 6 at-large berths. And you got to figure 1 or 2 of those will go to the SEC. Think about Notre Dame, think about, another team from the Big Ten. BYU is going to have room to get there as an independent. And so there are options, and it's not like there's only one choice and BYU has to take it or leave it. I think the Cougars bring a lot to the table as a potential member of a conference. They also bring a lot to the table as an independent. And I like the position that they're in, because I think it'll be a win-win situation, whichever choice Tom Holmoe decides to make.
Does BYU then have to cool it on the schedules a little bit to be in a playoff position, which would be 0 or 1 losses more than likely?
I don't know that they need to cool it. I think they need to continue to improve. Right now, they're on the cusp of being able to go, 11-1, 10-2 against a schedule like that. And with 6 at-large berths available, that should be enough in a lot of years. Then if they catch lightning in a bottle one year or another, where everybody stays healthy, they have a veteran team, they have a hot quarterback, then yeah, they can have 1 or 0 losses. And I think that would be a pathway to get there. I don't know that cooling the schedule is the best way to do it, because what they want to do is have edges over other teams that are vying for those at-large spots. And cooling the schedule might be an admission that, maybe the schedule's too much for them. I don't think it is. I think BYU is plenty good enough right now to compete at the highest level against the schedule that they have. And as they continue to have success against that schedule, it draws a higher level of recruit, and it becomes a self-perpetuating flywheel where they continue to get better and better and better. And the tough schedule is a part of making that work.
Trevor, you mentioned the Pac-12 in last year's scenario of college football would not have received an automatic bid to a 12-team playoff in the proposal that is out there right now. Well, not surprisingly, the Pac-12 apparently now wants Power 5 automatic bids, regardless if they're one of the top 5 highest-ranked conferences. Do you agree with the idea of Power 5 automatic bids?
I wouldn't have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that I did not like about the 14 playoff is the damage it did to the value of conference championship races, where if you've got the Pac-12 or Big 12 in most recent years, where potential champions lost a game or two early, they were out of the national conversation about the playoff. And the conference championship races there became regional sideshows of regional interest that didn't really matter on the national stage. And that's not fair to college football. It's not fair to those teams. This kind of a scenario where you've got automatic berths, whether it's 5 Power 5 or whether it's just top 6 ranked conference champions, what it does is it keeps those races viable on a national level. So if you have a freshman quarterback or a new coaching staff and you lose 2 or 3 games early, then by the end of the season, you're playing like a championship level team, make your conference championship game with 3 losses, and then beat an undefeated team who's ranked number 2 in the conference championship game. You should be in the playoff. Now, you've got 3 losses. I get it. You're ranked lower. I get it. But that keeps that conference championship race of supreme value. And it keeps every region of the country, fans in every region, interested not only in what's happening in their region on a national basis, but it keeps other fan bases in other regions looking across the country at who they might have to face in a potential playoff. It just increases interest. And the 14 playoff took that away, and I don't like that. So whether or not it's 5 Power 5 conferences, regardless of record, or the top 6 highest ranked conference champions, I'd rather have the latter, truthfully. But I think that either way, it makes conference champions incredibly important. And by the way, for those that say that, conference championship games are diminished because both teams might make the playoff, let me tell you this, that under the current proposal, the top 4 seeded teams get a bye. So if you have in the SEC, for example, Alabama at number 2, playing Georgia at number 4 in the SEC championship game, both the winner and the loser will make the playoff, but only the winner will get the bye. They'll have to win 3 games to win a national championship. The loser will have to win 4 games because they won't get a bye. So conference championships, even in that scenario, are still valuable.
Sure. And
so that's what I think the most important thing.
Yeah, and then there's the added value of teams that are 5 through 8 trying to have home field advantage for that first round. Which
so lose the SEC title game.
Another
so
level of context. All right, Trevor, let's finish with this. Is Jaron Hall right now, as we shift to the BYU quarterbacks, is he, in your mind, the guy followed by Baylor Romney and Jacob Conover, or is there really, truly a competition between all 3 leading up to the season?
I haven't seen or heard anything that says that any of those guys has separated yet. In talking to the coaching staff and people behind the scenes, what they've told me is that all 3 guys have elevated their game. Now, it's one thing if you've got 3 guys competing for the starting quarterback position and none of them elevate their game, then you have a one kind of problem. But in this case, all 3 are elevating. And so that's a different kind of a problem. I think Jaron has an edge because of his mobility, but I think the other guys have edges in their style of play as well. So I wouldn't even begin to guess which might be the starting quarterback for BYU. All I will tell you is this: all 3 are talented. All 3 have the ability to take this team where they want them to go. And because of the competition, whoever wins the starting job will have the best brought out of him, the very best. Iron sharpens iron. You want this kind of competition. And we go back to what we talked about earlier, that part of what's elevated the BYU program overall has been competition at every position. That has improved. And we see that right now at quarterback.
Trevor Matich, road tripping, yet taking some time out of his day to hang out with us on BYU Sports Nation. Safe travels to you and Dana. Trevor, enjoy the Dakotas, my friend.
Thank you. The Badlands await.